Howdy doody folks, Mark Bursteiner here talking about the Essential phone here on XDA Developers. This has been an interesting and polarizing device. It launched at $700 with some flagship specs, and now it's down to $500. So that means that we have a very different conversation to have. At $500, you're getting a device that really definitely certainly makes compromises, and they're non-trivial compromises too, but it's in exchange for a bit of a trailblazer here. We're dealing with titanium, with ceramic, and with a build that we have never really seen before. This is the first device from an independent company that really gives me hope for the future of smartphones not becoming this homogenized commodity that we're used to today from all the big players. The Essential phone, to me, feels like the 2017 Nextbit Robin. Back in 2015, when I reviewed the Robin, I was very excited for a lot of the same reasons. It was a small company daring to do something different, not just in terms of the form factor, but the software as well. If you remember at the end of that review, I said I was really excited to see what the Batman to the Nextbit Robin would look like. Well, we never got to see that device because Nextbit went under and got bought by Razer before we could. Now that it's 2017, 2 years later, I think this might be it. This very well could be the spiritual successor to the Nextbit Robin, especially when you consider that $500 price point and the flagship specs underneath the hood. All right, first things first, let's talk about the materials. This phone has the same quality as the Nextbit Robin does in terms of wanting to reach out and hold it, and a lot of that comes down to what it's actually made out of. Instead of aluminum, Essential opted for titanium, which has much higher tensile strength than aluminum, which we're used to. It does not scratch, scuff, bend terribly easily. It's the same stuff that they use for hip replacements and rockets. So for a phone, it makes perfect sense. Around the back, there's also added durability there too. We're dealing with ceramic, not glass. Around the front, it is Gorilla Glass 5, so that is one of the weak points of the device. But I think that the choices for materials here are a herald of hopefully something bigger. I really hope that these materials are just one facet of the future of smartphone design and production. Earlier this year in 2017, there was a big breakthrough with carbon fiber, making it much easier to manufacture at scale and for smaller purposes. So my hunch is that after the Essential phone, in about 2 years or so, we're going to start seeing phones that use titanium primarily. We're going to see aluminum go away almost entirely, and then we're going to start seeing conversations about ceramic versus carbon fiber. Do you prefer the lighter build, or do you prefer the improved durability of the ceramic? I'm very excited to see what build quality looks like over the next 2 years because of this phone. Sticking with the hardware, let's talk about the display. Like I said, it's covered in Gorilla Glass 5, and it is one of the only real weak points on the device. You can see this one's got a little bit of damage on the front. It was dropped thusly, so it sort of bounced from one corner to the other. Amusingly, if it had dropped on its corner, which is generally the weakest point on a device, it probably would have been fine because I have dropped it on its corner and it was fine, but the display has definitely taken a tumble. It is LCD, and it is surprisingly good. At first, I got to admit, I thought the colors were really cartoonish, a little bit looking like construction paper. I was sort of let down, but I think I might have just been a little too hypercritical on it at first. After about a week or so, I think my eyes adjusted, and then I really started to be able to appreciate the excellent contrast, the really just phenomenal viewing angles on this thing, and an overall responsive, good panel. I'm impressed. For the price of the phone now at $500, this is a good LCD display. Up at the top, you'll notice something a little quirky. There's a cutout there for that front-facing camera, and for a lot of folks, it's a huge turnoff. I don't mind it. It really doesn't bother me. In fact, I kind of like it. It gives the phone this really distinct feel, as though you know it's reminding you, just looking at it from the front, that you're using the Essential phone. There are so many phones, especially this year in 2017, that you cannot tell apart if they have identical home screens on them. They look exactly the same from the front. That's just not the case here. In terms of functionality, it does impact the way you use the phone a bit. You can still swipe down from it. It's not a dead zone. The digitizer is still there for your touch, but the status bar is effectively just really thick. That's really what it amounts to when you're using the device. You've got a really thick status bar with icons just sort of floating there. Then again, you've also got apps that haven't really optimized for this display just yet. So things like Sleep for Android don't work exactly as they should. The buttons are there, but you can't see them. So it does require a little bit of elbow grease from the developer. So overall, very good LCD display. But when I first started using this device, my main gripe with it was that at $700 a pop, this ought to have an OLED display. But now that we're talking about $500 a piece, I don't feel that way anymore. I think LCD is perfectly fine, but OLED is still so nice to have, so I gotta chalk it up into the negative column. Because with a display like this, an ambient display active, it's begging, just absolutely begging for an OLED display so that when you've got this beautiful full display edge-to-edge experience, you don't have all of those pixels actually emitting light with ambient display. And that's not all it's missing out on either. There's a number of other things missing. Wireless charging? No. Headphone jack? You're not going to find it here. No micro SD support, no dual SIM support, no IP67 or IP68. You're really just stuck with IP54, which is going to get you a little bit of splash proofness. There's a lot missing from this thing. But here's what's not missing. This thing has flagship specs under the hood, and I'm blown away. At $700, I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's a $700 device with no expandable storage. Of course, you're gonna have to give me 128 gigs, but at $500 a piece for a Snapdragon 835, 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, a decent camera, a decent front-facing camera, a good LCD display, and just phenomenal build quality, what? Like that, those are a lot of boxes ticked for a lot of people. And at that price point, I have a feeling you know what I'm going to say at the end of the video. On top of all of those beautiful flagship specs, the software is impressive, at least in terms of design. It's very simple, straightforward Android with only minor modifications made for this particular device. I realize design is sort of a stretch here because it is mostly just left alone, but that's a conscious design choice to just give you the essentials. You can take Android and make it your own on this device. When you couple that with fast updates from a very nimble company, you should have a very positive software experience. Unfortunately, that just isn't the case though. Because they are such a small company, yes, they might be nimble, but they don't have nearly as many resources at their disposal. So you are gonna find bugs on this device from the second you take it out of the box. It's just a sad truth about it. Despite 4 gigs of RAM and that flagship processor under the hood, there are still stutters, slowdowns, quite a bit of latency when it comes to touch input. I'm not impressed with this, but I do have hope that Essential will continue to put out updates on a monthly basis to get this to where it really needs to be, and that's what gets me so excited about supporting an underdog. The software on the device isn't the only thing that doesn't perform up to par. The camera around the back is a dual lens, dual sensor, 13 megapixel camera. It's fine, but not for a $700 flagship. For a $500 sort of mid-range with flagship specs, it's still fine, but your low light is gonna be bad. It's grainy. On top of which, this choice of using a monochromatic sensor, I think, is the wrong one. We have an entire conversation that we're gonna have in a separate video about dual lenses and what the best setup is, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. The correct choice for a dual lens setup is one regular, one wide. Not one regular, one telephoto, not one regular, one monochromatic, one regular, one wide. I'm not getting photos in low light, even in perfect light, that I'm terribly proud to show off. When you zoom in, you see the artifacts, you see the rough edges, you see the graininess. A good camera is essential, and the PH1 is missing a good camera. It's not all bad on the camera front though. The front facer doesn't have optical image stabilization or anything like that, but it does have 4K video recording, which is a first for the industry as far as I'm aware. This is one of those like nice new things that smaller companies can do and try out because they are so nimble. And you know what? The video quality isn't all that bad. Here, let me just show you. Whew. Look at this, 4K video on a smartphone. That's kind of unheard of, isn't it? It does like okay in most light. It's not gonna stabilize almost anything. But for 4K video on a front facer in an era where recording yourself is part of the industry, where every company needs to act like a media company, having 4K resolution and being able to see yourself while you're recording really does make a huge difference. Oh. Okay, not bad, right? 4K on a front facer. It's new, it's novel, hooray. There's a few other new things on here, but they definitely line up in the negative column. Around the back, you'll see these two little sort of magnetic pogo plug connectors. Why are these here? What purpose do they serve? I know there's a 360 camera that's supposed to clip onto this, but I don't think there was anyone asking for that. There's a dock that's supposed to be coming out very soon that you can drop this onto, but I don't think anyone was asking for that either. With a ceramic back, couldn't you have just done wireless charging instead of having to force us to buy your specific dock? I don't know, man. For a company called Essential, something like this doesn't seem essential to me. You know what is essential? A headphone jack. A great camera is really essential. I shudder to think how great this phone could be if instead of worrying about yet another ecosystem of mods for a phone, they actually just made the essentials. A great camera, a headphone jack, water resistance, the stuff we actually wanted and needed. I've said it before and I will say it again and again and again. I love me an underdog. The last thing I want to see is phones continue to go into the same direction all at the same time, just trying to see who can get there the fastest. I love to see a small company come in, shake up the game. Now, launching at $700 was not the right move, and clearly the device was not selling very well. As of right now, it's only sold just over 5,000 units. At $500, however, I feel very comfortable recommending this device to anyone who's just looking for a good, solid phone to last them 2 to 3 years. If all you really do is email, browse the net, snap some photos now and then, you're gonna be perfectly fine. You're gonna be very happy with this phone at $500. That's the last really big thing going for it. And dropping the price by $200 is what took the price from the negative column straight to the positive column. The Nextbit Robin launched at $400. For $100 more, I would have been so happy to see that phone with this kind of build and these materials and these specs under the hood. $500, the price is right. Essential PH1, pick it up. That's how I'm feeling about the Essential PH1. I think $500 is exactly how much you should expect to pay for a phone of this caliber. No, it's not perfect. Yes, it does do some things much, much better than other phones do on the market, but most importantly, it's a small company. And in order for them to make a second phone, we have to buy this one. If we want to tell the industry that we don't want the same homogenized garbage that we've been getting for the most of 2017, we have to put our money where our mouths are. Not to mention, Essential is also working on a few other things. They have a device called the Essential Home that's going to be coming out very soon, supposedly, and I'm very curious to see how it interacts with the Essential Phone and how it interacts with other voice services. It looks like a new front end for a smart home that ties into whether it's Alexa or Google Assistant. I'm not sure how much that matters, but a company that is taking those kinds of risks, I think is absolutely worth investing in, especially when you're talking about someone like Andy Rubin, someone who has a great pedigree, came from Danger, is the godfather of Android as we know it today. I'm very, very excited to see what happens with Essential going into 2018. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Did you buy one of these? Are you about to? Did you buy it at $700 and then you felt a little slighted because they dropped that price? Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of people in the comments who want your coupon code if you're not going to use it for yourself. Let me know down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Be kind to one another, and I'll catch you in the next video.